I mean, shocker, right? A pro AI film starring Chris Pratt sitting in a chair for 90 minutes and released in a cinematic graveyard of January. Honestly, the joke's on me for even sitting down and watching this piece of AI propaganda. If you don't know what this film is about, and honestly, I don't blame you, in fact, I envy you, Chris Pratt plays an alcoholic police officer who has been accused of murdering his wife and has to prove his innocence to an AI judge played by Rebecca Ferguson. Picture that War of the Worlds film from last year, just more boring and far less entertaining. In fact, this film was made by the producer of War of the Worlds, and I don't know, maybe he has like a hard-on for this type of film, but he appears to be the only one. So let's not dance around it. Mercy is not a good film. It's lazy, simplistic, and boring. But on some level, it is fascinating, if only because of how aggressively it misunderstands itself at nearly every turn. On a purely functional level, Mercy is technically more coherent than something like War of the Worlds. You can generally follow what's happening, the plot moves from A to B, and scenes connect in a recognizable way. There isn't a scene where an Amazon delivery driver has to deliver a USB to Ice Cube via a drone in order to save the world, for instance. But somehow, that coherence makes Mercy worse. Because once the confusion is stripped away, you're left staring directly at how hollow, predictable, and creatively bankrupt this film really is. One of the film's core selling points is its screen POV presentation. I have nothing against that style of filmmaking, but it's a style that lives or dies on commitment, and Mercy gives up on that commitment almost immediately. The film repeatedly breaks its own visual rules, introducing camera angles and shots that simply just cannot exist within its established perspective. We'll suddenly get cinematic coverage in moments where, moments earlier, the film insisted everything was mediated through screens, drones, or interfaces. This isn't just stylistic inconsistency that I'm describing to you, it's lazy filmmaking. The entire point of a screen POV film is limitation, and Mercy refuses to work within its own constraints the moment it becomes inconvenient. And that leads me to the tone, because tonally, Mercy is just completely lost. This is a film that desperately wants to be taken seriously. Every line is delivered with grim sincerity, every idea presented as if it's profound. But the writing is so blunt and underdeveloped that the seriousness becomes unintentionally funny. There's a version of this film somewhere out there that leans into satire. You know, something in the vein of RoboCop or Starship Troopers, where its obsession with AI, surveillance, and law enforcement could have been exaggerated, interrogated, or weaponized for commentary. Instead, Mercy plays everything straight, and because of that, it accidentally becomes a parody of the very ideas it seems to endorse. And those ideas, the film's thematic backbone, is frankly embarrassing. Its pro-AI, pro-law enforcement stance is presented with zero nuance, zero skepticism, and zero self-awareness. The moral arguments that the film presents feel like first draft ideas, they're never challenged, refined, or complicated. There's no tension between technology and humanity, just blind acceptance. There's no ethical friction, rather it's just reassurance. It's the cinematic equivalent of a dry corporate slideshow about why you shouldn't worry about automated systems making life and death decisions. So by the time the film reaches its conclusions, its message feels less like a commentary and more like propaganda, and not even compelling propaganda at that. And these problems are made even worse by an actively unlikable protagonist. The main character is dull, abrasive, and deeply uncharismatic, and the film makes almost no effort to compensate for that. We're rarely given emotional access, internal conflict, or vulnerability. He simply exists as a vehicle for the plot, making it nearly impossible to care about what happens to him, regardless of what you think of Chris Pratt. This is especially damaging in a film that relies so heavily on audience immersion. If we don't sympathize with the person at the center of the experience, the entire premise collapses. Which brings us to the cast. I genuinely do not understand how they convinced Rebecca Ferguson to appear in this film. Either she was shown a blank check, or someone has some pretty bad dirt on her. You cannot convince me she read this script and actively demanded to be a part of it. Her role requires almost nothing of her. Minimal emotional range, limited physicality, and no real character arc. I'm not gonna lie and say it isn't uninteresting to stare at her for 90 minutes, but she had the easiest job in the world, and it shows. As for Chris Pratt, whatever natural charm or charisma he usually brings is completely absent here. The performance is flat, disengaged, and oddly lifeless, as if even he knows there's nothing worth elevating here. The film's backbone relies on his performance, and he sleeps through it. On top of that, visually, the film is rough. The CGI is consistently poor. At times, when the action got going, it genuinely looks like a GTA cutscene rather than a major studio film. It feels artificial in the worst way, not stylized, just unfinished. In fact, if I'm honest, Mercy often feels like a film designed to be watched while scrolling on your phone. It's loud enough to demand attention, but shallow enough to not deserve it. It's boring, risk-averse, and painfully predictable. Every plot beat arrives exactly when you expect it to, and every character decision feels pre-programmed rather than motivated. I would not be remotely surprised if AI had some involvement in the writing process, because it feels assembled rather than written. There's no voice, no personality, no creative spark. Anyone could have written this, and even the ending song feels artificial. If I had to be positive, the last act is insane. It's not good, but insane enough to almost justify sitting through the rest of the film. Almost. It's such a dramatic tonal and conceptual escalation that it feels like the film briefly forgets what it is and spirals into chaos, which did make me laugh at points. It doesn't save the film, but it does make it somewhat memorable. You know, it's that kind of ending that leaves you staring at the screen in just complete disbelief, wondering how anyone agreed this was worth making. So, Mercy feels less like a finished film and more like a spoof that would play on a TV in the background of something better. You know, like one of those fake action films from the classic Simpsons, or one of those interdimensional cable segments from Rick and Morty. It's a bad screenplay wrapped in lazy filmmaking, filled with half-formed ideas, and delivered with absolute seriousness, which ironically makes it far more ridiculous than it ever intended to be. Honestly, while I was watching it, it did make me think that this concept would probably work better as a video game. You know, one of those small point-and-click indie games where you engage with the mechanics rather than just watch it. That could have made the concept far more thrilling and entertaining. But as it stands, Mercy isn't worth watching. If you're with your mates and you're looking for a film to make fun of, there are far better options available to you. Don't waste your time like I did. But those are my thoughts. Now I want to hear yours. I hope you haven't, but if you have seen it, what did you think of Mercy? And what's your go-to awful film to watch? For me, nothing beats Killer Bean. If you like my content, consider helping the channel grow by joining one of my tiers on YouTube, but no pressure. My Letterboxd is ESF_official, and I'll see you all in the next one.